The €264 billion pivot. The European Union is preparing to spend €264 billion to buy its way out of the American cloud. Today in Brussels, the Commission finally dropped the Cloud and AI Development Act, or CADA, signaling a hard pivot from writing rules to writing checks. For years, the narrative was about regulating the giants, but CADA proves the real strategy is reclaiming the balance sheet. By mandating a European first preference for public IT spending, the EU is attempting to force a market shift that years of antitrust fines couldn't achieve. This is not about safety or ethics. It is a massive infrastructure play designed to break the 70% market share held by 3 US hyperscalers. And the real move is buried in the new procurement levels. The AI factory narrative trap. Brussels wants you to think of these new AI factories as innovation hubs, but look at the CapEx requirements and they look more like state-subsidized server farms. The plan calls for tripling Europe's data center capacity by 2030, which sounds impressive until you look at the energy constraints. While the Commission talks about green computing, the reality is that these facilities will require massive priority access to the grid that most member states simply cannot provide yet. They are calling them factories to make the project sound industrial and productive, but the immediate goal is purely defensive. They need somewhere to host sensitive government data that the US Cloud Act cannot touch. The sovereign cloud isn't a new product, it is a new wall. This brings us to the real victims of the sovereignty framework, the public sector lockout. Under the new 4-level sovereignty framework, the most lucrative government contracts in finance and healthcare are effectively off-limits to non-EU providers. If you are a US-based cloud giant, your P&L in Europe just hit a ceiling. The Commission is using sovereignty as a technical barrier to entry, requiring localized hardware and European-only personnel for high-sensitivity workloads. It is the same playbook the US uses for its own defense contracts, but applied to the entire European public sector. The strategy here is to aggregate demand. If the EU can bundle its collective purchasing power, it can theoretically fund the domestic competitors that have struggled to scale for a decade. But this protectionist math ignores one vital variable: the silicon. And the new CHIPS Act update confirms it. The Gigafactory math problem. The proposal for 5 new AI gigafactories comes with a €20 billion price tag, but the math does not quite add up when you account for the specialized hardware. Even with a revised CHIPS Act, Europe is still years away from domestic high-end GPU production. This means the EU will be building state-of-the-art sovereign shells while still writing massive checks to American chip designers to fill them. It is a peculiar strategy. You are spending billions to achieve independence from US cloud providers while simultaneously deepening your dependency on US silicon providers. The Commission claims these facilities will train the next generation of frontier models, but without an equivalent surge in private venture capital, these government-run server farms risk becoming very expensive, very empty warehouses. This gap between physical capacity and actual usage is the critical risk. The signal under the noise. The Cloud and AI Development Act is the final admission that European tech cannot compete on a level playing field and has decided to change the field entirely. By linking the CADA infrastructure to the public sector's massive IT budget, Brussels is creating a captive market to sustain its domestic industry. Forget the rhetoric about open standards or research excellence. This is the formation of a digital trade bloc. For operators, the takeaway is clear. The next 5 years will be defined by compliance-driven infrastructure rather than performance-driven innovation. You will see a surge in European-based cloud startups that exist solely to serve the public sector's sovereignty requirements. For investors, the play isn't in the models being trained, but in the power and land rights securing these data center sites. Watch the permitting speed in designated AI regions over the next 6 months. That is where the real money is moving. Subscribe for more.